Hi everybody, my name's Andy Harmer.
And I'm Lucy Huxley from Travel Weekly. And all week, Andy and I have been bringing you some of the most interesting speakers who've been telling us all about the expedition cruise sector. It's been good, hasn't it, Andy?
It's been amazing. The destinations they talk about, and actually the passion that some of these expedition team bring to the conversation is really interesting. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to give you some of the best moments from the week and the best interviews and insights that we can bring you into this fascinating sector.
Hopefully watching these webcasts and listening to the people that we've brought together, some of them all around the world have come to talk to us, and hopefully that will give you some knowledge, some experience, and as I say, some inspiration to sell some of these cruises, because you can sell them now and they won't be traveling till 2021, 2022. So enjoy. So hello and welcome to the first day of the CLIA Expedition Cruise Week. And I'm delighted that the first morning we're joined by three experts in expedition cruising. So joining me today is Aishling McLoughlin, who is from Hapag-Lloyd. We've got Peter Shanks from Silversea, and we've got Jonny Peat from Celebrity Cruises. So welcome everyone. Now, this is the first day of this week we're devoting to expedition cruise. So let's start right at the beginning. You know, tell us about expedition cruising. What are the destinations that you can go to? Let's start with you, Peter.
Expedition is about getting right into the heart of a destination, getting right up close and personal with nature and with wildlife. And of course, allied to that, they tend to be bucket list experiences, something people really look forward to. I guess there are three iconic destinations where we can start. One being Antarctica, the second one being Arctic, so the two polar regions, and then the third one being Galapagos. But the trick of an expedition is surrounding yourself with real experts and getting up close and personal with nature, which is something that is such a wonderful experience. So expeditions are very special.
Okay, and talking about up close and personal with nature, I mean, Jonny, you know, Celebrity is big in the Galapagos, and presumably that's somewhere that you can absolutely do what Peter says, get right up to the animals and the flora and the fauna there.
Yeah, I think it's one of the only places in the world that you can actually get so up close and personal. We actually have a fleet of 3 vessels over in the Galapagos. I was lucky enough to visit Celebrity Flora, which we launched last June, and absolutely there's nothing else like it. The expertise and the information and the knowledge of the crew and the naturalists is just nothing like I've experienced before, so it truly is incredible.
What would you say, Aishling? Like, who would you sell this to if you were telling agents, you know, they should be selling an expedition cruise to?
Well, it really could be for a range of people, and I would say they would have to be very enthusiastic and very interested to visit some of these hard to reach, unique destinations of the world, and possibly someone who's interested in nature, in wildlife, and like Peter said, getting as up close and personal as possible to them. But it could be a range of ages as well. We have on Hapag-Lloyd cruises, for example, even our Young Explorers program for children as young as 10. But we get a wide range of ages on board and a wide range of people who, you know, whether they want to visit the polar regions of the world or maybe on one of the Amazon cruises, they are very passionate about the environment, about nature and wildlife.
Do you need to have a certain level of fitness to do an expedition cruise, Peter?
To an extent, although I met a wonderful lady last year, a Silversea guest who was 93.
Wow.
She'd been on about 15 expeditions, including a wonderful video of her sitting with a baby orangutan on her knee in Borneo. So you just have to be fit of mind. We will do the rest for people. I mean, a typical day on an expedition is up early, nice breakfast, a briefing from the expedition team, into the zodiacs, and we'll help people into the zodiacs, and then either off to explore the ice, or if you're in Africa, off to explore a remote village in the jungle, and maybe back at lunchtime, back into the boot room, cleaned off, total environmental protection, quick lunch, and then on a second outing in the afternoon, get back early evening exhausted, having had a wonderful day, have a lovely relaxing supper, listen to the expedition team about what's coming up tomorrow. It's not a relaxing holiday and it's not a cruise, it's an expedition.
If I'm an agent and I've got my customer, you know, over the line, they want to do an expedition cruise, they've decided that much, how do they then choose between all the different companies that are now offering expedition cruising, Aishling?
So it really depends. I would say first, for an expedition ship, I would say the smaller the better, really, so you can navigate and get into these smaller ports and get as up close and as possible with nature, and with these wonderful landscapes. Expedition cruising tends to be a higher price range because it tends to be a longer duration than, say, a 7 or 14 night cruise. And obviously you've got all the experts on board and all these very special services, and you're going quite far to these unique places. So it tends to be a higher price range anyway, but then you can choose whether you go for one of these older ships or whether you go for one of the new luxury ships.
So it would suit somebody then, I guess, who is perhaps retired, or is, if they need this longer amount of time. I mean, what is the sort of average duration, Peter? And I also wanted to ask about sort of seasons, because are there certain will agents need to really gen up on when you should go to certain destinations to see the best wildlife?
Yes, I mean, in the summer months, it's the Arctic, which actually is a terrific place to go because it's not far away from the UK. You fly from the UK less than 3 hours to join an Arctic cruise. So that's a summer, July, August. The Antarctica is winter. So it goes November to March. People sort of say December, January is the best time to go. That's when the ice is at its absolute best. And then the Kimberleys, for example, in Northern Australia, that tends to be in our winter, in their summer. So there are different times of the year. The good news and the tip I'd give to travel agents is people tend to book these a long time in advance. So in the current environment, when we're all concerned about, as we get back into the world of cruising over the next 6 months or so, we're now on sale right through into winter 21-22. So anyone thinking about a journey of that stature, it's not a last minute thing. They're thinking of booking it a year or 2 years out.
And do people just tend to take an expedition cruise and that's it? Or do they, I guess with the Galapagos, for example, would they do a land stay with the cruise, Jonny, or is it just the sort of the cruise on its own?
The duration that we do most is a 10 night. We gives you a couple of nights in Quito prior to boarding the vessel in Baltra in the Galapagos Islands. But you know what? If you're going to go that far, it seems to make sense to people that if it is that bucket list, that they would absolutely tie that in with other parts of South America. So yeah, some of the tour operators that we work with can put together, incredible packages that will give them a real great experience for the Galapagos, but elsewhere that's accessible for that region.
What would your advice be, Ash, if you were sort of talking to agents about what they could do in terms of inspiring their customer, their database?
Well, it's use all the content that we have available. All the cruise lines have amazing videos of the ships, but also the destinations, also images, very eye-catching. So if you're doing some social media promotion at the moment or on your website, it's very good to actually make use of all that content to capture the client's attention and yeah, gain their interest, really, I would say.
Last question. You're talking about it being a bucket list. I would certainly absolutely love to do an expedition cruise, but where would, what would be your number one destination or expedition cruise if you were able to choose go on one tomorrow? Ash, where would you go?
Antarctica has to be. See all the lovely penguins, all the wildlife, and the amazing, very dramatic landscapes as well. That's on my bucket list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Peter?
Definitely Antarctica. I've spoken to people who've been and they get up in the morning and they don't realise the ship has arrived. They come up on deck and they see they're alongside a 12-mile iceberg and they cry. So for me, Antarctica every time for the first time.
Okay. And Jonny, you're going to say Galapagos, obviously, but what do you want to see there?
Well, that's ticked off, but I'd love to go back. I have to agree, though, listening to Peter now and also the research I've done, Antarctica is got to be right there at the top of the list.
Thank you to Ash, to Peter and to Jonny. Thanks so much.
So delighted to be joined by Robin West, a regular of a CLIA event. Thank you very much for joining us, Robin.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, Andy.
We've spoken a lot, and you've given us your expertise and insights before. But for the benefit of people who don't know you, tell us a bit about you have one of the most exciting jobs in cruise, I think.
I do. I think my dad has told me that 1,000 times, that I have the best job in the world. But yes, so I work for Seabourn as their Vice President of Expedition Operations and Planning. And so having been with Seabourn the last 7 years or so, that really has involved running their Antarctica program for them. So the Seabourn Quest has now done 7 successful seasons down in Antarctica. Out of that initial first year, we also then developed a program called Ventures by Seabourn, which is kind of a breakaway, similar program to what we deliver in Antarctica in terms of an expedition product. We have smaller teams that go on all our other ships on select itineraries and sailings and destinations around the world and deliver an expedition experience in terms of an onboard academic program where they lecture through Seabourn conversations, and then delivering an off-ship expedition product in terms of Zodiac tours, hikes, kayaking experiences. And so over the last couple of years, we've really built that out and fleshed it out on almost all of our ships on a number of destinations around the world.
The Arctic experience is obviously very different to Antarctica, and I remember you talking about the Arctic experience in quite detail, to the extent that I really do now want to go when we're able to, but I certainly do want to go. But it is a very different destination experience, isn't it?
Yes, it is. From experience with guests, when I worked still as expedition leader on ships, guests would come to Antarctica, and Antarctica is one of those destinations that just blows you away. It's over the top. It pretty much leaves people speechless. People then tend to migrate on an itinerary to Svalbard, to the Arctic, and they're expecting a similar experience and to be blown away in a similar nature. And the Arctic's different. It's not quite as overwhelming. It's a little bit more subtle. Your wildlife encounters, you almost have to look for them a little bit harder, and you're almost rewarded in a better way when you do have those encounters. This expedition experience that we're giving our guests almost plays out more in the Arctic because the wildlife isn't as predictable. You're having to change itineraries more regularly. You can spend a whole day searching for a polar bear, and then 8:30 at night you sit down for dinner and one decides to walk along the shoreline, and boats get everyone in the Zodiacs and out you go. So it's exciting. It has a lot to offer. Of course, what you have in the Arctic has what you don't have in Antarctica, is you have all the fantastic small communities and villages that you can visit. So is a greater cultural enrichment experience when visiting the Arctic and the various regions.
We always talk about Arctic, Antarctica. There are so many other destinations. Can you give us some of the other great destinations that you visit?
Some of the other great destinations, we look at places like Alaska. It has that rough, untouched feel. It's a great combination of, mountains, fjords, wildlife, glaciers, scenery. So Alaska is a fantastic destination, and whether you're visiting Sitka, Ketchikan, Juneau, or whether you're exploring some of the more remote places, it has an incredible destination in terms of what it can offer. So that's a fantastic place. Some of the other areas that I've done expeditions on, and that Seabourn will eventually visit in some time, is areas like the Kimberley in Australia between Darwin and Broome. Yeah. I had a staff member once describe it as Antarctica without the ice. It is an incredible destination. The sandstone, the colors, various forms of Aboriginal arts, Gwion, the Bradshaw art, contact art. Our other plans, a great destination that's really not visited very often by expedition ships is the Amazon. And not just really up to Manaus, but going from Manaus all the way to Iquitos, heading much, much higher up into the Amazon, obviously having completely different types of experiences. So we're obviously at Seabourn very excited to offer that experience to our guests. And then, of course, in general, other destinations around the world, places Northwest Passage, the Northeast Passage, the Russian Far East. I think you'll find most expedition staff tend to be a bit pro cold destinations just because of the wildlife encounters.
Yeah.
The Pacific, again, opportunities with regards to snorkeling, diving, submarines, visiting small villages, cultural dancing experiences, Papua New Guinea, and the cultural changes as you move from kind of west to east across the Pacific is something quite special.
You talk about some of the experiences that guests can get up to. Are you finding guests are much more active or much more interested in getting in amongst all of the activity and trying different things?
Yep, very, very much. I think it a lot of it comes from the expedition team. There's a level of enthusiasm, I think, that is conveyed from the expedition team across to the guests. And you'll see it on an expedition ship. The first day, guests are a little bit hesitant getting in and out the boats. They're a little bit maybe nervous about that. But once you gain their confidence and they see, the enthusiasm and that everything runs well, and they're up for everything, to be honest.
You've painted a great picture of some amazing destinations. Thank you for talking to us. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
So hello and welcome to the next of our webcasts for the CLIA Expedition Cruise webinar. And I'm delighted that we're joined today by two absolute experts in this sector. So we've got Vladislav Saveliev from Ponant, and we've got Mark Spillane from Crystal. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for sparing the time.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Lucy.
Well, let's start with you, Vlad, because you've done a number of expedition cruises. So we want to get your real insight into what it's like. Give us some real flavour of what it's like on an expedition cruise. And presumably it varies depending on the destination you're taking that expedition cruise to.
Yes, Lucy, absolutely, indeed. And I firstly would like to use this opportunity to really, there's some myths going on about the expedition experience. And for the expedition cruise, you don't need to be an athlete, okay? And it's not a Bear Grylls experience where you have to swim to the shore and camp out in a tent, okay? There are two types of expedition itineraries. There's a polar expedition itinerary and there's a tropical expedition, okay? Now, an expedition cruise really focuses on the experience itself of the destination, really experience of the destination itself. This focus really is achieved by two elements: the expedition team and the vessel. Okay, now typically that involves smaller vessels with shallower drafts, and the benefit of this feature really is that the vessel can get into shallower waters to really be able to get up close and personal with the glaciers, fjords, nature, wildlife. And the second element is the expedition team, who have had decades of years of experience amongst them. And they are eager to share this passion, their research, their knowledge, be it from flora and fauna, animals, wildlife, nature, to our guests aboard, really getting under the skin of the destination.
Where do you start if you're trying to suggest that this might be a product that they sell to their customers? Who should they sell it to? And is it
Absolutely.
Destination first, or tell us how you go about it?
Absolutely. And, one of the great things that we're seeing now with all the new purpose-built expedition ships coming out is really a focus and a spotlight on this segment of the cruise industry, which I get really excited about because, it's where my passion is. And it can be overwhelming to a lot of travel advisors around the world that I work with. And one thing that I like to tell them is focus on a destination first. So if you have some clients that are looking to be in a more immersive expedition experience, find out where they want to go. A lot of these guests, they have a specific destination in mind. Typically it's the Arctic, the Antarctic, but there's some other great destinations around the world that maybe if they're a little concerned about the remoteness or the activity levels that the itinerary may require, it's important to offer suggestions of some other places. So if they want to do Australia, New Zealand, it's a little less remote than say the Arctic or the Antarctic, and they can start there and try some of these less exotic or less remote itineraries. If they fall in love with it, which most of the guests do that go on an expedition, then they can step up into maybe something like the Antarctic Peninsula from Ushuaia, or even going through the Northeast Passage.
All right, let's come back to you, Vlad, because I want you to just paint a picture for us, of just a day in the life of an expedition cruise guest?
Broadly speaking, the format of the expedition cruising is fairly constant across most brands in terms of the daily activities. You have your cruising aboard the ship, enjoying the sights aboard, the zodiac tours or excursions, getting up close to nature, wildlife, and also the landings ashore as well, where you have short hikes or medium short hikes to learn more about the wildlife, see places of historic significance. Yeah, but essentially, it really is down to the guest, and it really is down to what their experiences are available on the ship. For example, on Ponant ship, on the Chat-Cot, we have hot air balloon as an example. Yeah, so you can actually really get the hot air balloon and appreciate the infinite crystal clear panoramas of Arctic and Antarctica skies as an example.
What kind of people are you, should agents be targeting? Is it special occasions or people who've got more time? Because presumably some of these places are quite remote, aren't they? They take a long while to get to.
Yeah, so it depends on the guest experience that they're looking for, and there are some great remote itineraries for guests that have the time. The Northeast Passage, Northwest Passage, those are typically 3 or 4 week journeys overall. So it's definitely for target maybe 50s to 60s. That kind of gives a perfect balance of a guest that has the time to experience a longer journey, but also may have the means, because as you mentioned, it can be, I don't want to say expensive, but it can be a little bit more of an investment than a typical ocean-going cruise. But that's not to say that there's some expedition voyages that are very reasonable, even in the luxury segment, like Ponant and Crystal. And so it just depends. The length of the itinerary, of course, just like every other cruise, will ultimately depend on the cost and then the destination.
Okay, so to finish, I have never been on an expedition cruise. So if I was a customer sitting in front of you, you were running a travel agency and you thought, oh, I've got a person here who could be perfect for it, which expedition cruise would you suggest for me?
I've got to say Antarctic itinerary with South Georgia and the Falkland Islands. South Georgia.
Penguins.
Yes, and on South Georgia alone, there's an area that there's thousands of king penguins with some dramatic glacier landscapes in the background. It's just amazing. And if you can, Antarctica is remote as it is, but South Georgia, the Falklands just seem even more remote, and it's breathtaking.
Okay, and Vlad, what's your pick for me?
I actually agree with Mark, what Mark is saying. Antarctica, definitely. Wildlife is guaranteed there. Yeah. So the penguins, the good news, Lucy, is that penguins are as inquisitive about us humans as we are about them. So it's an amazing.
You can get really close to them, I understand. You
Indeed.
can actually get.
Yeah. But they get close to you. You just stand still and they get close to you. But I'm biased. I'm biased because my element really is the Arctic. It's Svalbard archipelago. Actually, I've been there 4 or 5 times, and it's the realm of the elusive polar bear. Okay, so 3,000 polar bears, abundance of wildlife in terms of birds as well, so perfect for bird watchers. Definitely consider Svalbard as the place to go as well.
Thank you both for your time. You've definitely got me excited, and I'm sure everybody else watching this will be as well. So thank you very much to Mark and to Vlad. Thank you.
So delighted to be joined by Captain James Griffiths. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. I can tell that you're on board the ship. Whereabouts is the ship at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm on board the Scenic Eclipse. We're currently going into a period of warm layup in Rijeka in Croatia, not far from where the ship was built, actually. So it's quite fun to be back in Croatia. It's a beautiful country, although a little unexpected, I have to say, but it is good to be back.
How does one end up being the captain of such a beautiful ship?
I actually started my career back in Cunard Line in 2000. So I worked for Cunard for 11 years on board QE2 and Queen Mary 2 and all of these things. So I ended up as chief officer in Cunard. And after that, I had the opportunity to actually get into the expedition business with Lindblad Expeditions just due to a sort of fortuitous encounter with a friend. So I ended up going to work for Lindblad on the National Geographic Explorer, and that's how I got to know Antarctica and the Arctic, and I sort of really fell in love with the polar regions, and I spent several years with them, and I ended up as captain in Lindblad on the Orion and the Explorer. And after that, I was down in Antarctica one particularly miserable day, and Windstar got in touch and asked if I wanted to be captain of a sailing ship in Tahiti, which seemed particularly attractive at the time. So I went to Windstar for a few years and ended up as expedition captain there. And I set up all of their Alaska stuff for Windstar, and I was captain of the Star Legend for several years. And after that, the Scenic Eclipse was launched into the market, and all of the amazing YouTube videos, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen, came out, and it seemed obvious that I had to be captain of that ship. So I got in touch with Scenic, and we had a dialogue. And I think my experience in the luxury side with Cunard and Seabourn, coupled with the expedition and then the management in Windstar, just sort of made me a really good fit for the company. And I've been here nearly 2 years now, actually.
And sailing a ship down to Antarctica is a very different experience to somewhere more port intensive like the Mediterranean, for example. So what's it like captaining a ship down in the polar regions?
Yeah, that's really true. And you can't, it's not, the skills that you learn in the Caribbean or the Med, they're really not that relevant to Antarctica, which is why, if you want to be a captain in Antarctica, you have to have a whole new set of qualifications and experience before you can be a captain down there. The weather is extremely unpredictable, particularly in the Drake's Passage. You really have to be very careful there. And of course, all of the ice that goes with it, of course, going to Antarctica. And when you're down in Antarctica, you're on your own, really. I mean, all of the operators are a member of IATO, the Antarctic Tour Operators Association. So we do agree to obviously support each other, very much when we're down there. But, there is no external support. There's no Coast Guard or state that will really help you out as such. So, it is a really unique area to operate, but it is phenomenal. I mean, undoubtedly for me, Antarctica is the ultimate place to take a ship to, really. We're very lucky on the Scenic Eclipse. It's the first of this new generation of purpose-built expedition ship, because historically the expedition market has been served by, much older, smaller tonnage. So to take a ship like this down there with the polar code classification, this incredibly strong hull, custom built for it with the helicopters and the submarines, it's taken it to a whole new level, really. We had an incredible season last year.
Of course, you don't just visit the polar regions, you visit lots of other places as well. So give us a sense of some of those other destinations.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is, the first ship, ship that's really built to go everywhere, see everything. So, we're just as comfortable as we are, breaking ice in Antarctica as we are, sailing into a super yacht marina in the Med, because the ship looks like a super yacht, of course. Right. And yeah, we do a lot of stuff in the poles, obviously, in Antarctica, South Georgia Falklands, Chilean fjords as well in South America, which are beautiful, and up in the north as well. We were due to be doing Northwest Passage this year, Canadian Arctic, Alaska, and Norway. So we do have a focus on the cooler regions, I would say, which are beautiful, and I personally prefer that to the warmer stuff. But the ship is also very, very happy in the Caribbean, and we do some sail through the Caribbean. And we also spend a couple of months a year in the Mediterranean as well. And we can use our helicopters in the Med. We can use the submarine in the Caribbean as well, of course. And we also have a full water sports facility, so we can go swimming off the back. We've got trampolines and kayaks, paddle boards, sailing boats, all this stuff as well.
Listen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you do, and send our best wishes to your crew, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Well, that was the week of expedition. How was that?
It was brilliant. Expedition cruising is perhaps a lot more than we thought before we listened to this week's worth of information.
I know you thought it was just about penguins.
Well, I do really want to see a penguin.
I'd love to see penguins in their natural environment, some of those amazing seascapes that they talk about, but also some of those places, as you say, the Amazon looks amazing for for future travels as well. But we hope we've captured some of those experiences in our webcast this week, and we will be back very soon with some more cruise webcast information and details and interviews and panels. So until then, stay safe and thanks for watching.